Hey, today I'm talking about The Duellists, Girlfriends in Italian, and Alphaville. The theme is 3 movies from the 3 most watched countries this year that weren't the United States. It's a really easy to say theme. First up is The Duellists. This is Ridley Scott's first film. I've seen most of his film, and I like most of his films, except for You, House of Gucci. And I should not have been surprised that this one was great. The basic premise is it's loosely inspired by a true story of these 2 French dudes who, over the course of more than 1 decade, constantly duel it out whenever they come across each other. Harvey Keitel plays the secondary lead, and he's just terrific in it. I love the main guy. Keith Carradine was just amazing. I more so know him from the first season of Fargo, which he was incredible there, but I really loved his performance here. He had lots of charm that worked really, really well, but then when he needed to switch it to being kind of more like, not necessarily bloodthirsty, but kind of bloodthirsty, it really, really worked. And all of the duels were great. They were so much fun. The action was very, very well done and balanced really well too. And it got pretty graphic at times too, but in a realistic way, and it was good. As I was thinking about this movie, I'm just like, you know, it's not directly, but this is kind of like a commentary on toxic masculinity, which, going off of the last duel, actually makes a lot of sense for Ridley Scott. I really like that about him. And yeah, the movie was just great overall. It's a good, solid movie. If you want just a good, solid movie, I recommend this movie. It really holds up. Some of the sound effects don't really sound the best, but the cinematography is so great. That last shot is just incredible. I was just like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. It's a really great story overall too. It is an all-around terrific film. Definitely recommend it. Next up is Girlfriends in Italian. I think that's what it is. That's what it said on IMDb, but then I googled it and just said The Friends, and I'm like, I don't feel like that's right, because these are definitely women. But it could be. I don't speak Italian. I'm gonna say as little about the basic premise of this because it's kind of, I wouldn't say a mystery, but there are lots of like twists and turns, and it goes in surprising directions. But I will say, it is about this woman who is kind of new in town because she is setting up this, well, they say salon. I think it's a clothing store, so I think it's just like a catch-all term. And she kind of stumbles across this woman who tried to kill herself. And then she sort of gets sucked into this friend group of this suicidal girl. And it's really, really good. What of course stood out to me the most is this film is from 1955. And I loved that a film from 1955 had pretty much all of the important characters are women. And they're also like not afraid to talk about suicide. They're not afraid to talk about adultery. They're also just not afraid to talk about sexuality in general, just like sexual freedom. And I'm like, this is great. This is part of why I don't like watching 50s American movies, because they're afraid of everything, whereas other countries are not. I will say though, it did take me a while to get into the movie, and I don't really think it's the movie's fault. I think it's the particular subtitles that Prime had. They just were going way too fast, and it was just like I had to just stare at the bottom of the screen. It was hard for me to look around, especially in the beginning, and especially when it was like all of them together. That just got to be way too much. It was a struggle to keep up with everything. But like by the end, I was just like, man, this is such a good story, and it has such a satisfying ending too. I was gonna put it in the quite liked category because of how long it took me to get into it, but I'm like, that story and ending are just so good. I had to put it in the really liked category. So again, I recommend this movie too. It's a trip. There's so many twists and turns. It's great. I like this movie a lot. And lastly is Alphaville. This is a 1965 French movie directed by Jean-Luc Godard, whatever, I don't care. I've seen a bunch of his movies. So I was like really excited for this because I'm like, oh, I like a lot of his films. I like French films in general. I'm like, ooh, it's sci-fi. That's exciting. It is not the good kind of sci-fi. So like all sci-fi, especially good sci-fi, is metaphorical. It's used as a lens to look at the subject that you know a lot about, but from a different point of view so you can get a new new understanding of it without like all your bias of whatever that one subject matter is. This movie is just metaphors and I don't understand it whatsoever. I couldn't pick up on any of it. It was just weird as all hell. It's kind of reminiscent of like The Lobster, which is a movie that I crazy love and definitely recommend, where it's just like this weird anachorical world. Whereas that movie made a lot of sense, this movie made absolutely no sense. That's the most like apt comparison though, because it could just be that like if you know absolutely nothing about online dating, like not even the concept of online dating, The Lobster would make no sense. That's probably the case with this movie then, is I just don't know what the base thing it is that they're talking about, so I don't understand any of the metaphors. Also, there is this narrator, who I guess is a computer, that keeps popping up, and the voice they got for it is like a toad who's smoked cigarettes their entire life, and they're trying to do ASMR. And I'm just like, this is hurting my soul with these sounds that are coming out of my speakers. It was the most disgusting thing. I hated it a lot, and it just kept happening. So yeah, no, I did not like this movie. I definitely do not recommend it. Alrighty, now for today's rankings. First up, we got The Duellists sitting at number 40 in the really liked category. It's really up there. And then not too far behind is The Girlfriends, in Italian, sitting at number 61, also in the really liked section. And then bringing up the rear, rightfully so, is Alphaville, sitting at number 261 in the didn't like category. And this is out of a total of 274 old movies so far this year. And that brings the grand total out of all the movies I've seen so far this year up to 363.